Today, Canada concluded its campaign for a seat on the UN Security Council. The result may not be the one we had hoped for, but we are proud of the campaign we conducted over the last 4 years.
Last week, Justin Trudeau failed in his bid to acquire a seat on the UN Security Council for Canada. It may be embarrassing, but what exactly is the UN Security Council? And why did Canada and the Trudeau government try so hard to get a seat? To start with, the UN was created in the wake of World War II, in an attempt to prevent another world war from ever happening.
Meanwhile, in San Francisco, delegates of 50 nations had met to form the United Nations organization. President Truman came from Washington for the signing of the historic charter. Foreign Minister Molotov of the Soviet Union lent his presence to the solemn and hopeful expression of man's resolution to live in peace.
Part of this was creating a council of the world's most powerful nations, mainly militarily. Its official purpose is to maintain peace and security in the international community. The Security Council takes the lead in determining the existence of a threat to the peace or an act of aggression. In some cases, the Security Council can resort to imposing sanctions or even authorize the use of force to maintain or restore international peace and security, such as peacekeeping missions. Notably, its interventions in Namibia, Bosnia, Rwanda, Afghanistan, and the UN oversight of apartheid in South Africa. This council is made up of 15 separate countries, but they're not all equal. 5 of the seats are permanent, given to the 5 most powerful nations at the end of the Second World War. China, the United Kingdom, France, the United States, and Russia all have a permanent seat on the council, uninterrupted since its creation in 1945. This position grants every one of them the power to veto any UN resolution, with no exception. Without the support of all these members, nothing can get passed. As these countries almost infallibly stand on the opposite sides of international issues, it's made the Security Council somewhat ineffective. But there are still 10 additional countries on the Council. These are the non-permanent members, and they aren't given any veto power, only the privilege of a seat at the table. Who gets these seats is determined by an election. Every year, 5 seats become available for re-election. Each country in the UN is granted 1 vote per seat, and to win, contenders have to gain a 2/3 majority. Who is eligible for a seat is based on the regional allotments of seats that were set out when the Council was created. This year, 2 seats came up for re-election for the Western Europe and other groups region. Canada falls into this category, and Trudeau has been vying for this seat ever since he became Prime Minister.
We are determined to help the UN make even greater strides in support of its goals for all humanity. My friends, it's time.
However, winning these elections is less of a contest of a country's status on the world stage and more about garnering the votes of individual member states in order to turn the tide. Winning a vote normally involves the promise of millions of dollars of foreign aid, lavish dinner parties, or in the case of Ireland, even hiring U2 to perform for the General Assembly.
So I think the most important thing to understand about Justin Trudeau's UN Security Council bid is that there was a certain inevitability about Trudeau losing. And we could have known that Trudeau was going to lose from 2016 when he started the campaign. Now, here's why. The reason why there was this inevitability is because our 2 competitors, Norway and Ireland, had been campaigning for much longer, for almost a decade, whereas Canada had only been campaigning since Trudeau's election as Prime Minister, and actually a bit after that in 2016. Now, as a result of that, and this is why I think Canadians, or at least Conservatives, are pretty upset about this, Trudeau committed a great deal of money towards achieving this UN Security Council seat. Now, not only did he spend $2 million, as the official record states, on things like gifts, on salaries, on a glitzy website, he probably spent about 100 million on foreign aid. Now, this is where it becomes pretty upsetting, I think. Not only did he give foreign aid, which on the, I suppose on the cusp of it seems like a pretty good thing for progressives at least, he also cozied up to many dictators. So he gave money to places like Senegal, which criminalizes homosexuality. He cozied up to Arab dictators who, as I think we all know, aren't particularly keen on the state of Israel. So I think the question we have to ask is, was this worth it? And Justin Trudeau in recent days has said that it was, because Canada wants to be, or wants to have, that reputation as someone who gives foreign aid and is on the world stage. But in all realities, we know that he wouldn't have done this if he wasn't campaigning for a UN Security Council seat. And we have to ask, what exactly have we lost here? We know we've lost 2 million, even though the real figure is probably around 100 million. But we've also lost some dignity here. Canada should never, ever, as a Western democracy, a liberal Western democracy, be cozying up to the people he's had to cozy up to in order to even be in the competition for this seat. Justin Trudeau, for instance, should have never or used a great deal of Canada's political capital to ring up 28 leaders throughout the pandemic to ask them solely for seats. And I think as a result of that, Canada has been embarrassed that we've lost a significant amount of money. And I know 2 million seems like pennies, but when it's 100 million, then it actually begins to account for something, particularly in an economic downturn. And on top of that, it's taken us back. We've now lost 2 UN Security Council elections on the trot. So Trudeau campaigned in 2015 saying that Canada was back. I think we now know pretty clearly that it isn't. And he certainly hasn't restored Canada's reputation any more than Harper did.
At the end of the day, winning a seat is mainly a massive status symbol because the term is so short and the permanent members still hold vetoes. But for a very public bid to enter, and multiple favors already promised in exchange for votes, this is certainly an embarrassment, especially for Trudeau himself.